I never expected the single dad janitor to find love, but when she walked in with a crib, I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The sun blazed overhead, but in the tiny, dimly lit school hallway, a chill wrapped around my heart. I had just finished mopping up a mess left by rowdy kids. My hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. A janitor. A single dad. I barely had time to catch my breath between shifts at night and looking after my little Tommy during the day, then she came into my life. I noticed her the moment she stepped through the entrance. Gentle smile, long, flowing hair, and above all, a strikingly beautiful crib cradled in her arms. It seemed so out of place, like a delicate flower in a concrete jungle. The room fell silent. Gasps reverberated, mixed reactions flickered across the faces around me. Who was she? What was she doing here? Did she need help? I could feel the stares burning into my back. Their whispers were like insects buzzing in my ears. Look at that, what's going on? The heartbeats around me quickened. My heart raced too, not knowing if it was nerves or something deeper. I wanted to run up to her and ask, but what could I say? Excuse me, miss, why do you have a crib? So, I stood frozen. My hands shook as I tried to grasp the mop handle, the plastic cold against my palm. My mind spun with questions. Had she lost a baby? Was she looking for someone? I watched her closely. She placed the crib gently on the floor, dust motes dancing around it and a shaft of sunlight spilling through the nearby window. I could almost hear the silence shatter as she set it down. Maybe it was the way she looked at me, her eyes locking onto mine for just a second, filled with unshed tears, not of sadness, but of hope. A flicker of connection. My breath hitched, and the world around us faded into a slow swirl of colors. Suddenly, an ominous sound broke the silence, a creaking echo, like a warning. It came from the old chalkboard behind her. Everyone turned. The chalk fell, cascading onto the floor like wayward dreams. What was that? Someone murmured, fear lacing their voice. She turned to the being outside the classroom, the sunlight striking her profile as she moved. Was she looking for someone? Something? I felt a pull, a desperate need to understand. Tommy would be safe for a little while longer. He was back home with a movie on, and my heart ached to reach out, to bridge whatever it was between us, but then, her fingers trembled, brushing the side of the crib, and my gut twisted. I just need to find him, she murmured, her voice cracking under the weight of unshed fears. Who was him? The air thickened, a knot tightening deep in my chest. Questions bounced around my mind like echoes in a hollow chamber. Before I could speak, a loud crash rang out in the hallway, stifling breaths. The sound of a door slamming. Panic surged. Everyone jumped. Our gazes darted. My heart sank. Was she even safe? I could see the worry etching lines across her forehead, echoing the chaos spiraling around us. In that bizarre moment, a flicker of recognition sparked in my chest. Maybe she was a mirror, reflecting everything I feared, everything I wanted to fight against. But could she also be a chance? Her presence was a promise dipped in uncertainty, and I ached to know more. The door swung open again, the world beyond busy with life as people rushed past, oblivious to our standstill. I just need to find him. Her shout pierced through the chaos. What was happening? I needed to know. The crowd swirled around us, conversations muted as if we were in a bubble of confusion. I took a step forward, but something held me back. Could I truly step into this mystery? Was I brave enough to face whatever lay ahead? I felt the air crackle around us, thick with secrets and longing. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference, let's connect. The hallway felt like it was closing in on me, the crowd pressing against my back as I stood paralyzed by uncertainty and curiosity. I just need to find him. Her voice broke through the noise, choking on what seemed like a tidal wave of panic. My heart raced. Who was the him she sought? My insides twisted with both empathy and a budding sense of urgency. I caught a glimpse of her face, marred by anxiety, and something stirred deep within me. This was no ordinary woman with an ordinary situation. She had stepped into my life claiming a piece of my heart I didn't even know existed. As the clamor of the onlookers echoed wildly, I stepped closer, weaving through the crowd until I stood just a few feet away from her. What can I do to help? I managed to ask, though my voice felt like a tender thread suspended in the tempest raging around us, but she didn't hear me. Her eyes darted, seeking something beyond what anyone else could comprehend. Where is he? She pleaded to the gathering crowd as if someone among them held the answer. Her voice quivered, suffused with desperation. Someone nearby mumbled about a baby, and the word seemed to ricochet through the air. Baby. The heartache in her expression twisted my own heart, a mirror reflecting the fears I battled every day as a father. The depths of her sorrow were palpable as she continued to scan the faces around her. Then, all at once, the chaos surged to a peak. A loud scream erupted from the physics lab down the hall, and we all turned instinctively. Without thinking, I reached out, my hand touching her arm gently. She looked at me. The weight of her gaze made me feel seen, as if for a fleeting moment, our fears were shared. I'm here, I said, feeling more like a lifeline than a janitor. I'm not leaving. Just tell me what you need. For a heartbeat, time stood still. The weight of her silent gratitude and disbelief hung between us like a fragile thread. Then, her voice lowered to a whisper, born of fear and hope. I lost him. He's out there somewhere. I just need to find him. Her distress pulled me in, eroding my fears of stepping too close. We'll find him together, I promised, sensing a fragile bond forming, an unexpected alliance amidst the turmoil. The world continued to spin around us, but we held on to a flicker of hope. Just then, a teacher burst out of the physics lab, eyes wide with panic. Everyone! There's been a lockout. We need to move. The crowd stirred, but I stood firm, anchored by the storm brewing inside my chest. No! We can't leave her. I shouted, my voice cascading over the din. We need to help. Some faces turned toward us, surprise mingled with caution. But in that moment of bravery, I saw something shift in the crowd. Hope flicked in the corners of a few eyes, a sense of collective purpose igniting. One by one, they began edging toward us. But just when it seemed the tide was turning in our favor, she looked at me, terror flashing through those soulful eyes. What if I can't find him? The raw depth of her question pierced me, a reminder of my own fears as a single dad. What if I lost Tommy? I felt the warmth of shared vulnerability spill into the space between us. You're not alone, I promised, forcing my own doubts to the periphery. A sudden alarm shrieked through the hallway, freezing everyone in their tracks. Everyone! To the exit, the teacher yelled again, panic threading her voice. A shudder ran through the crowd like an electric shock. But in that moment, she dropped to her knees beside the crib she brought, fingers trembling against its delicately carved edges. Please, she whispered, as if the weight of her grief was unbearable. I fell down beside her, the world around us fading as I wrapped my arms around her shoulders, allowing her to lean into my embrace. It felt so strange, yet so right. Two lost souls seeking solace. As I comforted her, a memory flooded my mind. The last time I held Tommy after a nightmare, his warm breath against my neck, his tiny body trembling. They'll find him, I murmured, my voice steady even as the ground beneath us felt like it was collapsing. He'll be okay. We'll be okay. Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket, a sudden alert that twisted my insides. I fished it out, the screen revealing a message that turned my world upside down. Urgent, please come home. I need to talk about Tommy. That I froze, the phone slipping through my fingers as the devastating implications sank in. What if they were taking Tommy away? A sense of dread washed over me, wrestling with the hope I had just found beside her. The woman glanced up, concern knitting her brow, and I realized I couldn't let her see my fear. I couldn't let my own monster drown out the spark of newfound hope in her eyes. That we have to get out of here, I whispered urgently, forcing a smile like a shield against the storm gathering inside me. We can figure it out together. I promise. But as chaos swirled around us, my heart was already aching with the dread of what waited for me at home. The grip of uncertainty tightened, and the line between hope and despair blurred beyond recognition, leaving us both standing at the edge of something bigger than either of us could face alone. The noise of the alarm blended with the frantic shouts echoing through the hallway, creating a clashing symphony of panic that rose like a tide. I gently coaxed the woman, whose name I still didn't know, to her feet. As she staggered slightly, her grip tightened on my arm. In that moment, we were more than just strangers thrown together by circumstance. We were two souls clutching the thread of hope amid a tempest. Let's find a safe place, I urged, looking around for a way out. Just beyond the main entrance, the growing line of students and faculty was funneling outside. My instincts screamed that whatever was happening, whatever danger loomed inside, might pale in comparison to the concern gnawing at my heart regarding Tommy. That I can't just leave him. She cried in a surge of desperation, her eyes shining with unshed tears that threatened to spill. I felt a twist in my chest, as if the matter was settling in my gut. The fear bouncing about her features reflected my own. We were both terrified of loss, of failure, of not being enough for our loved ones. Listen, what's your name? I asked, hoping to draw her focus away from the chaos. She locked her gaze on me, blinking rapidly as if anchoring herself to my words. Amy, she breathed, the name falling from her lips like a prayer. Amy, I repeated, savoring the softness of it. We can find him. Let me help you. Each word felt like a vow, a promise brewed from the depths of my fear. Just then, a voice pierced through the tumult, a faint semblance of order amidst the chaos. To the gymnasium. Everyone evacuate to the gym. The command reverberated, and I knew we had to go if only to escape the barrage of uncertainty. Okay, well go, I said firmly but gently. Well, get him back, I promise. Right now, we need to take a step towards safety. I squeezed her hand, a silent pact that we would face the unknown together. As we shuffled along with the crowd, small moments of kindness flickered, an arm reaching out to steady one another, a soft hand brushing against an anxious shoulder. Among the multitude of fearful faces, there was a surprising tapestry of compassion. It was a reminder that even during trials, we are never truly alone. I and the thrumming distance, I could hear the faint wails of sirens, a foreboding heartbeat of the world outside our immediate chaos. The notion that Tommy might suffer because of my decisions flooded me anew, and I pushed against that tide, forcing myself to focus on Amy's immediate need. I and the gym, the atmosphere shifted, a cavern of voices and fears, yet there was unity, a bonding formed through shared trepidation. People huddled together in groups, faces pale but determined. I steered Amy toward a quieter corner, attempting to carve out a temporary haven. I have to call my sister, she gasped, pulling a phone from her pocket. I watched as she swiftly dialed, her anxious fingers moving frantically across the screen. I held my breath, searching her features for any flicker of reassurance, but only shadows of dread haunted her expressions. Please pick up, she urged, her voice trembling. There was no answer, and she hissed a shallow breath, despair creeping into her frame. I stepped closer, uncertain but needing to comfort her. Amy, maybe it's best to focus on what we can control right now, I offered, my own voice strained yet steady. The storm raged between us, wrestling with despair, both trying to grip the edges of what we feared losing. But just then, another figure approached, a familiar face, one belonging to a teacher whom I'd gotten to know over the years. Her expression was grave, etched with worry, but she paused when she recognized Amy. Amy! She exclaimed as if relief swept over her. I'm so glad you're okay. Have you heard anything about your baby? Amy shook her head, her breath hitching. I wanted to shield her from the rolling waves of grief threatening to drown her spirit, but in the beat of silence that followed, I felt something crack inside. I couldn't escape the stark reality that loomed above us. My own message, the urgency of my home life now like a dark cloud. Over our moment of solidarity, but before I could voice my own turmoil, Amy's phone vibrated in her hand. Her eyes widened, and she quickly swiped to answer. "Hello." Her voice was tentative, as if every breath hinged on the call. I stepped back, letting the moment unfold before her. Whatever news she received, good or bad, would reverberate through her soul, and I could only hope to be the anchor she needed. In that heavy silence, I reached for my own phone again, heart pounding against my ribcage, praying the impending storm at home would remain at bay. The message from Tommy's school seemed to pulsate through my mind like a drumbeat. "I need to talk." Amy's voice cracked, and when she turned to me, her expression had changed, something deeper and more fearful settling in her wide eyes. They found him. The hope was there, fragile as the first bloom of spring amidst winter's frost. But as I opened my mouth to speak, my phone erupted with a new notification. My heart sank as I glimpsed the words, "Tommy's gone. We need to talk about his future." The walls of the gym started to close in, a tempest of voices backtracking as panic surged once again, but my own chaos left me breathless. I felt a cold shiver slither down my spine, a split in my loyalty to Amy and the emerging fear of what awaited me, now so intertwined I could scarcely decipher my own thoughts. Before I could piece together a response, Amy turned, the weight of her gaze shifting between hope and dread. I was teetering on the brink, lost in the depths of uncertainty. "Please tell me everything will be all right," she implored, her voice a mere whisper, yet it echoed within the cavern of my own heart, intertwining our sorrows and hopes into a fragile tether. And at that precipice, I faced a truth even more haunting than I had expected. Sometimes, the strongest threads of hope are woven from the deepest fears. The thin air of the gym hummed with tension, a tapestry woven with the threads of fear and hope, binding us together as we stood on the brink of an unfolding tragedy. Amy's eyes searched mine with an intensity that threatened to break me. She needed something solid to hold on to, and in that moment, my anguish collided violently with her desperation. Is it true?" she whispered, her voice shaking like a fragile leaf in a storm. "Did they find Tommy?" I wanted to scream, to shake my head and erase the truth that had just settled in my chest like a stone. I wanted to tell her that he was okay, that everything would work out just as we hoped, but the message on my phone pulsed in my mind, filling the space between us with ice and shadows. "They found him," I murmured, barely above a whisper, though the words cut like shards of glass. Her breath hitched, expectation filling the cavity where hope had once thrived. "What do you mean? Where is he?" I took a step back as if to create physical distance from the weight of the truth that collapsed upon my shoulders. "They alerted me that he's at the hospital, Amy. We need to go. Now." The thought of Tommy lying there, vulnerable and alone, my heart splintered at the idea. The vibrant world around us grew muted, colors washed away by fear. I could only focus on Amy's expression as the reality of my words sank in. She faltered, and for a moment, looked as though she might crumble. But in the depths of her despair, a flicker of resolve lit her eyes. "No. I'm not leaving until I find him," she asserted, her grip tightening on her phone as if channeling all her determination into that single device. "I won't lose him. I can't." The warmth of her unwavering spirit seeped into the cold spaces of my heart, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this fight. We stood together, an unyielding wall against the encroaching tide of hopelessness, fueled by our love for those we cherished most. As she sank back into the turmoil of her thoughts, I glanced at the gathered crowd. Anxiety thrummed through the air like an electric current, faces tight with worry, and I felt a surge of compassion for the people surrounding us. I saw a mother cradling her child, a teacher soothing a trembling student, and in each exchange, a collective strength began to build, a community thrust together by unforeseen circumstances. But when I returned to Amy, I found that hope mingled with something darker in her eyes, and I knew I had to act. "Okay, listen," I said with urgency. "It's chaotic, but if we push through the main exit, there's a chance we can get a ride to the hospital. We can find him together." She swallowed hard, nodding slowly, though doubt lingered in her gaze. At that moment, I felt another vibration from my phone, a text bearing Tommy's friend Gavin's name. I hesitated, a confusing whirl of emotions wrapping around me before I opened it. Jenkins, Tommy told me he was in trouble. I didn't think it was this bad. Height's really bad. Please, I'm so sorry. The message laid heavy in my hands, blurring my vision. Tommy had trusted me, and the weight of that knowledge hung like a leaden anchor in my gut. Amy, I said, my voice trembling as I lowered my phone. We need to go. Now. The urgency in my words snapped me back to the pressing situation. With a steely determination, we moved forward through the cluster of bodies filling the gym, Amy half dragging me as we navigated the overwhelming surge of people all desperate for answers. I felt a warmth bloom at the edges of my fear as I absorbed every small gesture of humanity: an elderly man helping a fallen student, a girl offering her water to another who trembled from the fright. As we reached the main exit, I looked back at the sea of worry etched onto every face. Each one carried their own burdens, their own fears, and I vowed silently to help them through it as best as I could. Once I dealt with my own heartache, we burst through the doors into the damp morning light, the world outside flooded with sirens and flashing lights. My heart raced, both from the urgency to find Tommy and the suffocating reality that awaited. Amy's need was palpable, wrapping around me fiercely. Once we were outside, she turned to me, pulling me close. What if, her voice wobbled, and I could see the hesitations clawing at her confidence. What if something happens while we're away? This vulnerability held another layer altogether, and I placed my hand on her shoulder, needing her to feel my resolve. Nothing will happen. We'll be there for them. We'll find him, I promised, and as our eyes locked, shields of fear fell away. For the briefest moment, the bond we shared flickered like the light from a candle, stronger together against the encroaching dark. We reached the road, but before I could raise my hand in signal for a passing vehicle, a police car sped by, nearly blurring past us. A thought struck, casting a shadow across my heart. What if it was too late? Amy's breath hitched beside me, and I instantly sensed that our shared fears did not bask in isolation. They twisted together, forming a tapestry brightened only by our tentative hope. Just then, a familiar face caught my eye, a janitor I recognized from the endless corridors of the school, his expression solemn yet grounding. He rolled to a stop, rolling down his window. Everything all right? You look like you could use a ride. In that fleeting moment, before we could respond, sirens shrieked again nearby. My heart twisted as the weight of the unknown closed in. Did the seeming kindness hide something darker beneath the surface? Yes, I replied, trying to mask my anxiety while motioning for Amy to get in. But as we stepped forward, unbeknownst to us, time held its breath, waiting for something more significant, inevitable, and shattering, an impending revelation waiting to unfold as we ventured into the fray. The interior of the janitor's car was cluttered with remnants of a life lived in the shadows of the school halls. Crumpled fast food bags and worn-out sports gears surrounded us, creating a strange comfort amidst our uncertainty. Amy slid into the back seat, her fingers brushing against mine briefly, igniting a flicker of warmth that helped chase away the creeping chill of despair settling over us. Where to? The janitor asked, his eyes still focused on the road ahead. I hesitated for a moment, swallowing the anxiety that threatened to rise in my throat. St. Joseph's Hospital, I managed to say, my voice coming out steadier than I felt. As he pulled into traffic, the sirens faded into the background, merging with the vibe of the city pounding on as if nothing were amiss. The streets pulsed with life, people going about their daily routines blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. But with each passing moment, the gravity of our situation pulled at me, gnawing away at the edges of my hope. Amy stared out the window, her reflection merging with the rain streaking down against the glass. An overwhelming silence sprawled between us, thick with the weight of unspoken fears. I wanted to reach out, to break the quiet with words of comfort, but what good would my platitudes do when I couldn't even reassure myself? Tommy's going to be okay, I whispered, though the words rang hollow in my ears. My thoughts were a tumult. I could feel the storms raging in Amy's heart, too, as she clenched her fists, tapping her knee rhythmically, an unconscious gesture that echoed her anxiety. Suddenly, the janitor, whose name I had yet to learn, broke the silence, his voice gentle. You know, there's a lot of good in this world, even when it doesn't seem that way. Kids like your friend they're tougher than we think. I hope so, I replied, but even as the words left my mouth, I felt something welling up deep inside. The weight on my shoulders felt like it could collapse, but still, the thought of Tommy's strength urged me to hold on a little longer. As we turned a corner, Amy's phone buzzed in her pocket, a jarring noise that jolted us both to attention. She fumbled it out, her hands shaking, and her eyes widened. "It's Gavin again, what does it say?" I leaned close, desperate for anything that could tether our unraveling hopes. She opened the message, reading aloud, "Amy, please. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Tommy was scared. "They said he was supposed to meet someone, but I thought it was just a rumor." The truth behind those words sunk into the depths of my heart, icy and bitter. Meet someone? What does that mean? I could feel the knot of worry in my stomach constricting tighter. Before Amy could respond, the janitor turned to us, concern etched across his face. "Hang on tight, I'm taking a short cut," he said, veering abruptly down an unfamiliar alley. Everything felt frantic as we barreled past a series of graffiti-stained walls and tightly packed buildings that pressed together like the anxiety weighing on our hearts. Sirens wailed again in the distance, feeling too close now, as if they were heralding the outcome of something far worse than we could bear to believe. "Amy, we have to," I started, but the words fizzled out as she gripped my arm tightly, her knuckles white. "What if he's in danger? What if he waits for someone who never shows?" The fear in her eyes mirrored my own, and in that moment, an unsettling thought crept into my mind. What if the person Tommy was meeting wasn't who he thought they were? "We have to keep moving forward," I urged, fighting my own internal dread. "We can't afford to lose hope." All at once, the janitor took a turn that led us back into a main street, the hospital no longer visible in the distance. Panicked, I quickly texted Gavin back, "Where is Tommy now? We're trying to get to the hospital. Please, tell me everything." Amy watched closely, and within moments, a reply came through, one too stark, too direct. He might be at the park near the corner. I heard them say his name over the radio, but I didn't think. What does that mean?" Amy asked, confusion mingled with fear. "What radio?" The janitor's brow furrowed in concern as he re-entered traffic. "Stay calm," he urged us. "We're getting you to the hospital. But if he's at the park, we might have to check there first if it's urgent." Before I could process what he meant, sirens rang out closer than before, echoing off the buildings like ominous drums beating in time to our racing hearts. Suddenly, Amy's phone pinged again. Another message from Gavin. "Are you guys close? They're saying there's an active situation at the park. You need to hurry." My breath caught in my throat, and for the first time since this nightmare began, dread transformed into sheer panic. The active situation painted curves of chaos that threatened to swallow us whole. What had been just a grim day suddenly pivoted to something darker. "Park near the corner. Go!" I shouted, feeling the urgency surge through my veins. The janitor obeyed without hesitation, speeding toward the area Gavin indicated while Amy clutched her phone, each ping resonating deeply as our pulse quickened. Every detail surged, every heartbeat connected us further to the chaos awaiting us ahead. As we approached the park, a wave of flashing lights erupted before us, casting eerie shadows across the ground. Emergency vehicles crowded the entrance, rain slicking the pavement like dark foreboding. With our hearts thumping like drums in our ears, I turned to Amy, who looked ready to bolt from the car. "Stay close. We'll find him." But as we stepped out, the sight before us shattered my resolve. Caution tape snaked around the perimeter, officers moving with urgency, and the encroaching sense of dread collapsed over us like the weight of the world. Then, just as I registered the scene unfolding before us, I heard someone yell Tommy's name, a recognition that sent ice coursing through my veins. "Tommy!" I cried, but the soft whimper of another voice just behind us chilled me. The realization swept over us this was only the beginning of a much darker truth waiting to unravel, pulling us deeper into the abyss of uncertainty. The air was thick with tension, a palpable fear clinging to our skin as we stepped into the chaos. Amy and I entered the park, the harsh glow of lights cutting through the dark like a spotlight on our unraveling lives. The frantic shouts of officers intertwined with the chaotic energy surrounding us, my heart hammering in synchronicity with the sirens wailing in the distance. "Where's Tommy?" I squeezed Amy's hand tighter, trying to anchor her with every ounce of strength I had left. There was a stillness alongside the chaos, like the world was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable storm to break. As we pushed forward, a figure in a dark uniform rushed past us, and I caught snippets of conversations, words like situation, protocol, potential suspect, swirling around in a disorienting haze. Fear gripped my throat like a vice. My mind raced, churning with images of Tommy being caught in the merciless tides of this grim reality. I wouldn't let that happen. I couldn't. That I looked over to Amy, her face pale and taut with anxiety, her eyes darting around, searching for something, anything. It was a reflection of my own panic. "We need to find out what's going on." I gestured towards a cluster of officers. "Stay here, okay?" "I'll ask that in no way." Amy protested, her voice rising in determination, a flicker of fire breaking through the clouds of despondency. "We're in this together." As soon as she spoke those words, I felt a warmth gather in my chest. Beneath the weight of despair, her resolve was a lifeline, a small, flickering flame that reminded me that we were not in this alone. We stepped towards the nearest officer, the chaos still swirling around us. "Excuse me," I interrupted, my heart racing. The officer turned, concern washing over his stern features. "We're looking for our friend Tommy. He was supposed to be here, but we don't know what's happening." "Is he okay?" The officer shifted uncomfortably, glancing over his shoulder before locking eyes with us. "There's been an incident. We're still assessing the situation. You should stay back." The way he spoke, his eyes reflecting a mix of urgency and empathy, sent ice through me again. "What does that mean?" Amy's voice trembled. "Is he hurt?" "I can't give you details right now," the officer replied, his tone firm. "But please, I suggest you remain calm." And as he stepped back to confer with his colleagues, despair washed over me like an unrelenting tide. Amy's grip tightened on my arm again, her nails digging in just enough to refocus my racing thoughts. I couldn't break, not now. Before I could formulate a coherent thought, I noticed a group gathered a few yards away, their whispers echoing with a chilling weight. I caught sight of Gavin in the throng, his face pale and drawn. "Gavin." I pushed through the crowd, pulling Amy along. We reached him, breathless and shaken. His eyes darted nervously, filled with the shadow of regret. "Did you hear anything?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Where's Tommy?" He looked down, shoulders slumping as if they carried worlds of guilt. Don't know. I thought he was with you guys." I heard them say his name on the radio, and I got scared. "I didn't mean for things to go this far." Amy's breath hitched, and I felt the anger welling within me, mixed with terror. "What do you mean, this far? What happened with Tommy? Who was he supposed to meet?" I could only hear bits. "There's talk about someone being after him, someone dangerous." His words tumbled quickly, each syllable a slice of anguish. I thought he'd just be scared, not in actual danger. Amy shook her head in disbelief, her voice shaking with rage and fear. "This isn't just something you wanted to keep to yourself, Gavin. This is about Tommy's life." Tension thrummed in the air, disbelief clashing with the fear that had taken up residence in the corner of my mind. Just then, a shout cut through the commotion, a commotion that sparked a rush of dread within me. "Get back!" shouted an officer, his voice booming, commanding the crowd like thunder. My heart was a wild beast thrashing within my chest. Without thinking, "Amy." And I took a step back, something primal urging us away from the encroaching chaos. "What's happening?" I glanced over my shoulder. Another officer pushed aside the caution tape, ushering people away from a specific area. "Our direction." I caught fleeting glimpses of a figure sprawled on the ground, the distinct flash of an ambulance pulling in while others swarmed in an organized frenzy around it. "Please," Amy begged, her voice cracking. "Tell me that's not a scream from the crowd." Momentarily froze my blood. The air crackled with a mixture of fear and panic. "Tommy!" The desperate call echoed in my ears, freezing me in place. The paramedics worked quickly, urgency blended with dreadful precision. The whispers around us undulated like waves crashing on a dark shore, surrounding me in a suffocating cloud. My vision blurred, the scene feeling distant, like a bad dream I couldn't wake from, and then, through it all, a small voice piping up amidst the chaos. I saw him. In the park. He's hurt. I turned, panic skyrocketing, realizing we needed to push through to know if the voice belonged to someone who hadn't yet lost hope. The fragile red thread binding us to Tommy pulled taut, my body moving almost instinctively towards that glimmer of clarity against the darkness. As we got closer to the source, I glimpsed a familiar dark-haired girl standing apart from the vacillating crowd she had spilled through. Tommy's over there. They took him. With every step, my heart pounded a frantic beata prelude to the horrors lurking beyond the next line of officers. We couldn't afford to lose faith now, not when we were so close, and as I locked eyes on the source of the commotion, all hopes collided with the sheer weight of dread, a realization crashing in like thunder. The figure on the ground wasn't just anyone. It was Tommy. In that moment of unfiltered fear, I felt a greater weight than I had ever carried, the silent understanding that this is where everything changed. And as the sea of dark uncertainty washed over us, I grasped Amy's hand tightly, hearts racing toward an unknown storm of revelations waiting just beyond the chaos. The world felt surreal as I pushed through the throngs of frightened faces, my heart beat loud enough to drown out the distant sirens. The paramedics' frantic movements created a haunting rhythm, each gasp of disbelief from the onlookers intensifying the horror swirling around us. Amy was beside me, but her presence felt almost ethereal, as if she could vanish at any second. Neither of us wanted to believe that the figure sprawled on the ground was Tommy. The crowd seemed to split open, too paralyzed by fear to fully understand the urgency driving my legs forward. Tommy! I called out, the name ripping from my throat, raw and desperate. It felt both hopeful and doomed. Stay back. An officer warned, the sharp edge of his voice piercing the chaotic murmurs. I felt Amy's grip tighten as she pulled me back, but the instinct to reach out, to connect with Tommy, was stronger than fear. It was then that I caught the flicker of movement. The paramedics were kneeling by him, their faces cloaked in determination. The bright lights danced ominously around the scene like stars against the backdrop of a looming night. I could hardly breathe as I strained to see that is he okay? My question slipped from my lips, shaky and full of dread. I struggled against the officers, who had formed a perimeter, hearts racing with silent prayers that I could barely articulate. Amy's eyes locked on mine, fear mirrored in her gaze. We have to do something, she whispered, her voice fierce yet trembling. There was strength in her resolve, a spark of determination amidst the swirling darkness. As the crowd murmured and shifted, I felt an unfamiliar hand on my shoulder. I turned to find a kind-faced woman in her early 40s, with an air of calm amidst the craziness. "I'm a nurse," she said quietly, scanning the scene. "Can I help you navigate through, please?" I stammered, my voice a mere whisper. "We just need to know if he's stay close to me," she instructed, her tone steady as she led us forward. The officer hesitated but ultimately stepped aside as the woman guided us to the front. The figures of the paramedics slowly took shape through my blurry vision, and hope flickered within me like a soft candle in the storm, but as we squeezed through, I realized the truth that twisted deeper than any physical pain. The very thought of losing Tommy felt like an implosion. My chest tightened painfully, more than the weariness etched on my heart. My world was unraveling, and for every moment I seemed closer, the fears returned tenfold. Just then, a loud shout erupted from the crowd. "Get a doctor! Now!" Panic ignited an already fraying atmosphere, and another paramedic hurriedly joined the fray, increasing the urgency surrounding Tommy. Amy clutched my hand, a lifeline tethering me to sanity. Her eyes darted towards the commotion, pupils wide with fear. I could feel the tremor in her voice as she gasped, "What if don't," I interrupted, forcing strength into my own voice in a way I didn't feel. "I wouldn't let us go there, not yet. As the chaos unfolded, the kind nurse whispered encouraging words to Amy and me, utterly poignant in this sea of uncertainty. "Stay calm," she urged softly, "he's strong. You've got to trust that he will pull through." Just then, one of the medics turned to us, the weight in his eyes speaking volumes. "He's stable," he said, but the shadows behind his words remained. What does that mean? Amy's voice broke, fissures cracking in the heart of our fragile hopes. Is he going to be okay? Right now, we're doing everything we can, but the situation is serious, he replied. Every word was a bee sting, sharp and unyielding. Dropping my gaze, I absorbed the reality behind those understated words. Suddenly, a fateful thought surged forward. Despite being the anchor in this storm, maybe I was also the one who had been here all along through countless storms, threads of my own buried fears woven tightly with Tommy's struggle. As the paramedics began to carefully transport him onto a gurney, I felt the heaviness in the air settle deeper, a weight of untold burdens that all lay upon us. The world around us twisted, momentary visual flashes of light and dark emergent screams, resolute faces of the paramedics, and moments suspended in desperation. Looking up, I noticed Amy staring, almost transfixed by Tommy being wheeled away. It was a moment teetering on the brink of infinitia suspended breath before chaos erupted anew. But then, out of nowhere, a familiar figure pushed through, fighting against the tide of people. My heart sank as the realization dawned. It was Gavin, the regret cascading over him like a heavy cloak. He was soaked with a rain of tumultuous emotion, his face pale with an overwhelming storm of guilt that I didn't mean for any of this to happen. He shouted, words spilling out, desperate and remorseful. But as I saw those haunted eyes, a cold knot twisted in my stomach. What if Gavin was somehow connected to this? What if his actions indirectly put Tommy in danger? Gavin, what are you doing here? I pressed, gripping Amy's hand tighter. You have to tell us. What do you know? He looked like he was about to break, and for a fleeting moment that felt suspended in time, our truths collided, the vulnerability etched into his expression forcing a revelation. I didn't send him the message. I didn't think he'd actually show up in that instant. The pieces began to crack open, revealing a labyrinth of questions that would unravel even deeper mysteries. As I stood there, caught between conflicting emotions, feverish thoughts began to circle. It was only the tip of the iceberg. This was all so much larger than we understood, an unfolding narrative strewn with strife, secrets, and unspoken connections. The fear of losing Tommy gnawed at the edges of my consciousness, now competing with the turmoil brewing in Gavin's implications. Before I could process it all, the reality sank in with terrifying clarity. Within this storm, everything I thought I understood about loyalty and friendship was about to be tested like never before. Our fragile bond could shatter with every truth revealed, and just as I prepared to confront Gavin and search for answers, the unmistakable sound of another siren wailed in the distance. Closer, this to me a new urgency racing towards us, a harbinger of yet more revelations waiting just around the corner. As I turned towards the gathering darkness, a sense of dread washed over me. I realized that this night wasn't just a fight to save Tommy, it was a confrontation with everything we thought we knew, darting toward a precipice that would redefine our lives forever. The lights from emergency vehicles flickered like a heartbeat, a pulsating reminder of the disaster unfolding around us. The sirens echoed through the chaos, puncturing the heavy air as I stood there, grappling with the aftermath of Gavin's confession. Each second felt monumental, a clock ticking down towards something I couldn't quite understand. My heart raced, caught between the turmoil of emotions flooding my mind and the stark reality of Tommy's condition. Amy squeezed my hand tighter, her voice trembling as she broke the silence. What do you mean you didn't send him the message? What were you talking about, Gavin? Her eyes searched his, wide with a mixture of anger and fear. At that moment, Gavin's face twisted in anguish. I wasn't the only one who knew where he was going, he muttered, the weight of his words thickening the air. Someone else texted Tommy, someone who wanted him there. What do you mean? Shadows cast doubt across Amy's features, her breath hitching as she pictured the possibilities. Who? The tension demanded an answer, but Gavin's voice was barely a whisper, heavy with regret. I don't know. I just have this feeling, and I couldn't stop him. Was so adamant about going. He said he had to face something. Each word emerged choked with remorse, and beneath it lay a deeper fear, like a whisper of the truth he withheld. But why would Tommy go after something dangerous? I pressed, my mind racing with frantic possibilities. Who could have fueled such reckless bravado? My gaze darted back toward the paramedics, desperate for a glimpse of hope emerging from the chaos. Gavin sank against the wall, a crumpled figure caught in an avalanche of his own making. I didn't know it would lead to this. I didn't think clearly, I shot back, anger flaring within me. The realization struck like a cold slap. His lack of foresight could have fatal repercussions for Tommy. Amy's anguish cut through our burgeoning confrontation. Stop it. This isn't about blame. We need to focus, figure this out before it's too late. Her voice rose above the din, a bell of clarity amidst the chaos. As if on cue, 2 more paramedics arrived, shifting urgency to the air as they wheeled a new gurney. The faces were grim. Drenched in heavy anticipation, we awaited news that could either be merciful or catastrophic. Please, someone must know what's happening with him, I murmured, though dread gnawed at every hopeful thought clinging to my mind. In that moment, a wave of familiarity surged through the bystanders' individual faces flickered like echoes, connecting the present chaos to the ties of our shared histories. Whispers and muted cries broke through the tension like a fading echo, all of us bound by our unchanging reality facing potential loss. Suddenly, I noticed a woman standing apart from the crowd, her eyes darting nervously between us and the paramedics. She was gripping a white blanket, her sharply intoxicated breath revealing an unexpected intensity. My heart jerked at the void in her countenance, a deserted path of grief etched across her features. She looked aware of something we weren't, shadows of her past clinging to her like a fog. Excuse me. I called out as I stepped forward, hoping for an untangled thread leading to clarity amid the dark. Do you know Tommy? She met my questioning gaze, her hands trembling lightly. I had seen him a few times at the community center. He always had that smile, you know. People were drawn to him. Her voice was small, almost swallowed by the surrounding noise. But beneath her softness was an undeniable grief mingling with hope. Did you see him before this? I pressed, every moment dripping with urgency. Each revelation could sway the delicate balance we hovered within. The woman hesitated, swallowing hard, her gaze drifting down the chaotic scene. Yes. She began, but the words caught in her throat as if wrapping around the sorrows she harbored. He was heading to help someone, who? Amy's voice cut through, sharper now, almost desperate. All the air in the space seemed to thicken obscenely, and then she spoke, breaths uneven. I think it was Sarah, his old friend. She was in trouble. What trouble? What trouble? Each question fell from my lips like stones, each one another weight pressing down on the uncertainty that I don't know all the details. She cried, her emotions breaking free like a tide. But I heard from someone that she was having a tough time with her family, that she was scared. Tommy wanted to help her. The information hung heavy between us, an undeniable shift in the fabric of our understanding. A realization washed over me. Tommy had been drawn into someone else's storm. A generosity that could cost him everything. Fury rose in me anew, but beneath it layered a sense of loss for the boy who had only wanted to help amidst the pull between friends and secrets. Gavin, I turned toward him, a writhing storm of emotions surfacing. This is on us. We were meant to protect him and we didn't know how. As the sirens retreated momentarily, the weight of the situation curled like smoke, wrapping itself around my very core. Behind it all, I felt the tremors of a bond threatening to fracture at the seams as secrets intertwined with personal pain, and yet within that pain, the glint of something raw and transformational flickered like a shy glow. Before it's too late, Amy interjected, her voice fierce, cutting through our spiraling fears. We need to find Sarah. If we can figure this out, we might still have a chance to save him. The resolve nestled within her words urged us on, fanning the flame of hope even as the shadows gathered closer than ever. But as we prepared to launch into action, I caught one last glance at the nurse. A reassuring smile graced her face, grounding us momentarily though uncertain of what lay ahead. However, just as we turned to escape into the night, the infamous sound of a shattered scream erupted from somewhere deeper in the crowd. It froze us in place, each heartbeat echoing an unfamiliar dread. The last remnants of light dimmed around us as we collectively turned. Something had shifted again, the convergence of lives always in peril, secrets still hiding in treacherous corners, testing the very fabric of who we were as we raced toward unforeseen destinies. A stark realization washed over me, intertwining fear with a feeling I had been so desperate to avoid. Everything we thought was solid may just be the facade of something profoundly broken. The air felt electric as we stood frozen, the echoes of that horrified scream wrapping around us like a suffocating shroud. Every flicker from the emergency lights illuminated the faces in the crowd, already contorted in various stages of fear and confusion. My heart pounded, a drum in the silence, as I struggled to breathe through the sudden, crushing weight of dread. "Did you hear that?" Amy's voice trembled, pulling me back from the edge of panic. I nodded silently, each beat of my heart synchronized with her rising fear. "We need to see what's happening." Gavin pushed away from the wall, every inch of him radiating tension. He caught my gaze, an unspoken truce of determination passing between us. This was no longer just about Tommy, this was about all of us, very second alive with the urgency of our choices. We navigated through the throng of onlookers, our journey marked by sidelong glances filled with questions we dared not voice aloud. With every step, the air thickened with foreboding, and I could feel anxiety crawling up my spine. "Over there," I pointed, my gut twisting at the sight of a group huddled close, their whispers lost to the cacophony of sirens and wailing in the background. For a moment, I thought I recognized one of the figures. Was it Sarah? My heart raced as we drew near, but a part of me felt the impending dread tighten. As we reached the periphery of the crowd, I realized the woman at the center of attention was not Sarah but someone familiar, a face I had known long before this night had unfolded, a blur from our childhood days. It was Claire, someone I never expected to find here, not at this hour, not under these circumstances. "Claire!" I called, pushing through the crowd desperately. She looked up at me, her face a canvas of horror. "What happened?" I was here when. Her words caught in her throat. "I think someone might have been hurt. There was a scuffle, and it was bad. The lights from the emergency vehicles, they're just," she stammered, a mixture of grief and confusion twisting her voice into sorrowful chords. "Who?" Amy pressed, urgency oozing from her every word. "Was it Tommy? Did you see him?" She shook her head, tears streaming freely down her cheeks, drawing streaks through the dirt lingering on her skin. "No, it wasn't him," but there was a loud crash and yelling. "Too thin." Kit was Sarah. "She's been." Claire's voice trailed off, drowning in the weight of unsaid words. My pulse quickened, the name felt like a knife cutting through my resolve. "Where's Sarah now?" But before she could respond, a young man, evidently overwhelmed, burst from the huddle, his shirt torn and his breath ragged. He fell to his knees, sobbing openly. "I didn't mean to. I tried to stop it. I just wanted her to listen." My heart dropped. "What happened?" I asked, crouching down to his level, searching for clarity in the storm brewing inside me. "She wouldn't leave. She wouldn't listen when Tommy tried. And the others. They were too angry, brought the fight right to her doorstep." His voice cracked, the weight of his guilt spilling into the night like ink. Each revelation felt like a stone dropped into a pool, sending ripples of understanding across our lives. Tommy, in his earnest endeavor to help, had walked straight into the jaws of something that would swallow him whole. "I need to find him," I whispered, realization crashing over me like a tidal wave. We had to find Sarah because through finding her, we could uncover what held Tommy captive in this tangled web of emotions and choices made in desperation. "We have to help them both now." Gavin grasped my arm tightly. "If she's in danger, it could be a trap. We don't know what we're walking into," he cautioned, his face lined with concern. But I could see that the same fire burned within him. "We can't ignore this," Amy insisted. "We have to at least try. Not just for Tommy, but for Sarah too. They both deserve that." With resolve igniting a shared purpose, we shifted back toward the entrance of the alley where the whispers of the crowd grew faint, leading us deeper into shadow. The darkness felt welcoming and terrifying all at once, each footstep ushered by the heartbeats of our silent promises we would not lose them without a fight. But just as we reached the mouth of the alley, an unexpected voice raised from behind us, piercing through the uncertainty. They went toward the old warehouse. The words hung in the air like a siren call, beckoning us forward. I turned quickly, the look in another stranger's eyes haunted, familiar, yet utterly foreign, kindling an unexpected connection. "You know them, don't you?" I implored, desperate for more than a mere destination. But just as quickly as the words fled my lips, the realization hit that a different siren blared suddenly, colder than those that had accompanied us before, drowning out my voice as the figure began to fade into the swarming night. "Wait!" I yelled, but they slipped through the crowd, leaving behind only shadows to cling to. I found myself standing there, the heartache overtaking me, spiraling into the unknown depths of an unresolved storm. The weight of the unknown pressed heavily on my chest. Then, like a thunderclap in the distance, a new thought collided within me. If Tommy wasn't the only one in trouble? What if Sarah had drawn him into something darker, something that threatened not just their worlds but all of ours? The weight of unknowing forged a villain in my mind. Yet amidst the chaos and despair, a quiet flicker of snow-like hope still persisted, reminding me that love often bloomed in the unlikeliest of places, even in darkness. But we must hurry, time was unraveling in anxious threads, and all paths were tangled with uncertainty. Would we reach them before it was too late? As I anchored my resolve, a shattering noise erupted in the distance, and the world around me began to shake, more than mere tremors of fear, a chilling portent of something dreadfully more significant that would once again ripple through the night. As the thunderous noise erupted around us, panic surged anew, filling the air with a frantic electricity that crackled within my very bones. Amy's grip tightened around my arm as we stumbled forward, propelled not just by fear but by a fierce need to save both Tommy and Sarah. With every breath, the weight of those names echoed in my mind, a haunting reminder of how intertwined our paths had become. This wasn't just about rescuing a child, this was about confronting the shadows lurking beneath the surface of our lives. "Where's the warehouse?" I shouted above the escalating chaos, the distant wails of sirens fading into the background as I focused on the task ahead. Gavin stood beside me, his face pale but resolute. "A few blocks down, we can cut through the alley," he replied, urgency bleeding into his tone. Amy nodded in agreement, her eyes shimmering with determination. "Then let's go. No more waiting." We dashed through the confused crowd, hearts pounding in unison with every hurried step. The city was alive with flashing lights, and beneath the chaos, a sense of impending doom loomed like an unrelenting storm cloud, threatening to swallow each of us whole. Each echo of our footsteps seemed to resonate with every heartbeat, a frantic symphony entwined in desperation. When we reached the alley, an inexplicable darkness enveloped us, wrapping around our bodies as we plunged deeper into the unknown. The narrow passage filled with the scent of damp asphalt and musty air only heightened our anxiety, every silent moment echoing our fears back at us. "Do you think Tommy and Sarah are really in there?" Gavin's hesitance spilled out, winding around my heart like a noose. The thought of them tangled deeper in whatever trouble had drawn them both to this place made my skin crawl. "Tommy's strong," I affirmed, though the uncertainty gnawed at me. "And if Sarah was in danger, he wouldn't leave her behind." Amy shot me a look, a blend of terror and hope in her eyes that mingled together to create strength. "We have to believe that," she said firmly. As we approached the end of the alley, the old warehouse loomed ahead, its darkened windows glinting ominously under the flickering streetlights. Shadows danced across its facade, a chilling welcome to the venue of our trials. The weight of foreboding sank deep into my chest as I exchanged an unspoken resolution with Amy. We were ready to confront the tempest waiting beyond that door. "What now?" Gavin asked, voice barely a whisper, his vulnerability open and clear against the stillness of the night. As if answering the question, a muffled noise, struggling voices raised in anger punctured the silence. "They're in there," I declared, my heart racing as the urgency surged within. "We have to move." As if launched from a slingshot, we broke into a sprint toward the entrance, hearts pounding like war drums, each beat pushing us closer to whatever lay beyond. Bursting through the door without knocking felt like a violation of some unseen barrier, but it was too late. The moment our feet landed inside, a world of chaos unfurled. The room lay dimly illuminated, filled with shadows and scattered debris. My eyes darted around, latching onto the chaotic scene unfolding before us. There, caught in a fray of chaos, were Tommy and Sarah face to face with menacing figures, uncertainty dancing in their eyes. Get away from them! I yelled, springing forward as adrenaline surged through me. But before I could reach them, one of the figures turned, a wild look in his gaze that sent chills racing through my spine. Stay back! He demanded, his voice roaring against the backdrop of confusion. Amy stepped forward, instinctively placing herself between Tommy and the threat looming before us. We won't let you hurt them! She screamed, a tapestry of unyielding courage against the fear gripping our hearts. The confrontation spiraled into chaos, and yet, as I moved forward, I could only focus on one thing: Tommy. Buddy! I cried out, each note a desperate plea as I surged into the darkness of the room. In that instant, everything transformed this time. Slowly a suffocating web of emotions surged, light colliding with dark as I found Tommy's terrified face amid the turmoil. Dad! He shouted, relief flooding his voice as our eyes met. My heart surged, a rush of warmth flooding my veins despite the perilous storm surrounding us. No! You shouldn't be here. Tommy's little voice trembled, caught somewhere between fear and strength. Neither should you. I replied fiercely, moving closer, fueled by a protective instinct that burned fiercely in my gut. A surge of energy pulsed between us, anchoring me for a heartbeat to the very essence of fatherhood, a promise that I would fight for him, no matter the cost. I reached forward to grasp his arm, ready to pull him to safety, but in that very moment, chaos erupted around us. Gavin screamed, "Look out!" as another figure lunged toward Amy, and the air sliced became thick with the scent of fear and desperation. In a heartbeat, everything transitioned into a wild frenzy of movement. I saw bright flashes of anger, confusion merging with the cries of young voices, Amy, Tommy, voices that became stitched onto my heart, intertwining with my resolve to shield them from the impending darkness. Time twisted as I reached desperately for Amy's hand. Get him out of here! I shouted, my voice tearing above the rest of fierce urgency demanding heed. The room was engulfed in unbearable chaos, shadows blending with desperation like a storm threatening to transform into something much worse. But there, in the heart of it all, I could see Amy and Tommy retreating toward the back of the room, the safety of what we desperately needed drawing near, and just when I thought we could escape the chaos, the figure that had previously threatened to tear us apart fell in front of me, barreling into my path, sending me crashing to the ground. Pain erupted through my body as my heart raced. How could I get back to them? I couldn't lose them again. Stop! I demanded, voice quaking under the weight of my desire to protect. But the man didn't listen. Instead, I felt a strength swell from within, the depths of fatherhood roaring to life as I pushed myself up from the cold concrete floor, determination swelling, even as chaos erupted around us. Meanwhile, Amy shielded Tommy, the pair united against the darkness as they reached a corner. Now it was all or nothing. Tommy! Amy! I bellowed, desperate to reclaim what was most precious to me. Just as I surged forward again, ready to chase down the plague of despair, the noise of the struggle around us began to shift. A new barrier entered the fray. Officers flooded into the space, the lights from their uniforms casting a sudden beacon through the emerging chaos. Shouts mixed with the cries for help, fueling a sense of urgency that washed over me. Get back! An officer shouted, and as I glanced back, I saw the threat dissipating. Tommy! I yelled again, finally feeling the bond strengthen as the darkness threatened to alter our fates in ways we couldn't imagine. I fought against the tide of uncertainty and chaos as I reached out for my son, Amy still standing strong beside him. In that wild moment, just when I thought we'd fade into the chaos and become lost forever, Amy turned around, determination etched across her beautiful face. We're okay. We'll find you. She screamed, the light in her spirit shimmering against the shadows surrounding us. All of us, I affirmed, and finally, we surged together, Tommy and Amy, our hearts entwined in togetherness woven tighter than the chaos. And as the world around us began to settle, the turmoil of uncertainty trembling beneath our fight, I drew them toward me, gripping their hands tightly. Even as the officers ushered us to safety, the chaotic symphony began to meld into an unresolved rhythm, a tightly woven tapestry of hope emerging from the shadows. But amid that unfolding resolution, as sirens faded into a distant murmur, I felt Tommy's grip on me tighten. "What happens now, Dad?" he whispered, his little voice full of innocence, looking up at me with those big, beautiful eyes flooded with uncertainty. "This moment," I murmured, pulling him closer, "we know we're not alone." I could feel the warmth thread its way through my veins, illuminating our recently darkened paths. The battle wasn't finished, but we had each other, and together we could face whatever would come next. Together, as I held Tommy and Amy in my arms, I finally found the clarity amidst the noise. Love, unconditional and fierce, would carry us through even the darkest shadows. And as we stepped into a new beginning, the raw promise of hope rang true, lighting up the world with a brightness that would guide us forward. In a moment of quiet reflection, with the echoes of sirens behind me and the weight of love binding us together, I realized that this was just the beginning. Our journey forward would be met with fierce obstacles, deeper connections, and unconditional love that would rise to meet the tide. "Whatever comes next, we face it together," I vowed, my voice steady and strong, as we stepped into the dawn of possibility. For the first time, the shadows slowly began to retreat, and I understood, we could rewrite our story together, one heartbeat at a time. As the morning light filtered through the narrow alleyway, I whispered softly, "We'll always find our way home." And in that moment, it finally felt true.